So, you're going to China for the first time and it just feels like a lot. The payment, the apps, getting around, and most importantly, the language barrier if you don't speak Mandarin. This is exactly why I'm going to walk you through everything I've learned from traveling in China in this video. One question that I get a lot from viewers is, when is the best time to visit China? To me, the top consideration is to check if my travel dates coincide with their national holidays and any major conferences. You really don't want to be caught in massive jams, you don't want to pay peak season pricing for hotels, and then simply not enjoy the holiday. The other point to consider is the season. China is really huge. Summer in Guangzhou, for example, is very different from summer in Chengdu. But in general, I have very much preferred visiting in spring than in winter. In winter, you have to consider potential closures to attractions due to the weather. Sometimes they also choose to carry out maintenance works simply because it's considered off-peak, which is exactly what happened to me in Guilin. The upside to visiting in winter though is that it's much less crowded than in spring or autumn. So if you're an introvert and you prefer a quieter holiday, you can tahan the cold and don't mind skipping certain attractions, then go for it. China offers visa-free entry for 30 days to citizens of some countries, including Singapore. If you're not a citizen from one of these countries, then you'll need to apply for a tourist visa before you travel to China. Now, when you land in China, the immigration is usually quite smooth. Of course, have your arrival card filled out and get your visa page ready. One thing to note is that the immigration officers will collect your fingerprints. On this, there seems to be some differing accounts from what I hear from my friends and from viewers. For myself, during my first trip to Guangzhou in 2023 and subsequent trip to Shanghai in 2024, I was directed to some machines at the airport for fingerprint collection before immigration clearance. The first time it happened, it was very troublesome because the machines just could not scan my passport, and all of us spent some time trying to get it to work. The second time was easy because they already had my fingerprints on record, so I simply scanned my passport, printed out a confirmation slip, and proceeded straight to immigration. The strange thing is, despite having my fingerprints collected at the machines, the immigration officers still scanned my fingers again at the counter. So honestly, the step at the machine just seemed kind of redundant to me. This was confirmed in my most recent trip because this time round, I simply skipped the machines and ran ahead to the immigration counters, and it worked just fine. So if you ask me, I would say skip the machines, but if someone calls you out about it, just comply and don't get into any trouble with the officers. I usually use Trip.com to book hotels and trains. China hotel rates on Trip.com are generally cheaper than other booking platforms. But there were some exceptions where the same hotel was cheaper on Agoda because of credit card discounts. So I would say do your homework to check out the different deals before you make your booking. When looking for hotels in China, I always make sure to stay near train stations. Just make sure that the station is the one that you intend to alight at. For example, for my trip from Shenzhen to Guangzhou, I found out that the train stopped at Guangzhou East Rail Station for the timing that I preferred. So I intentionally looked out for a hotel near Guangzhou East Station to reduce the inconvenience of travelling alone with my luggages. To book tickets on the high-speed rail, I also use Trip.com. The tickets are usually released about 2 weeks before, and the better timings run out pretty fast for popular cities, so try to book it as early as possible. I'll leave the links to book the tickets in the description below. There are 3 ways you can make payment in China, that is through payment apps, credit card, and cash. The most widely accepted form of payment is through payment apps like WeChat and Alipay. While international chains and larger stores in China generally still accept credit cards, the smaller shops, restaurants, and street stalls rarely accept credit card payment. To use the payment app, all you need to do is to download the app, register for an account, and then follow the steps to link your Visa, MasterCard, or JCB credit card to the payment app. Do note that they will need you to take a photo of your passport and your face to verify your account, and this may take some time, so please don't wait until you're in China to set up your payment apps. The downside to using WeChat and Alipay for foreigners is that a 3% transaction fee applies to single transactions above 200 renminbi. To circumvent this, I use Changi Pay, which can be used at all Alipay-enabled merchants with no transaction fee incurred. But you need to have a Singapore or Malaysia mobile number in order to top up your wallet through PayNow. While Changi Pay does not incur any transaction fee, I have noted that the exchange rate on Changi Pay is about 1 to 2% worse than the rates on my credit card. So where possible, I will still use the payment apps or my credit card, and I will only use Changi Pay when these options are exhausted. One important thing to note when using payment apps in China is that some shops don't use merchant QR codes. Instead, they use their own personal account QR code, in which case your payment app is not going to work because foreigners are not allowed to make transfers to individual wallets. This happened to me in Guilin, and I eventually had to use cash to pay for the goods that I purchased. So if you're planning to go to smaller cities and towns, I suggest that you prepare some cash just in case the payment apps fail. Getting around in China is supremely easy. In my most recent trip, I commuted on public transport like 90% of the time. I only use Didi to book rides if it's more convenient to do so. To use their public transport, just simply activate the public transport mini app on WeChat or Alipay. On WeChat, this is a little tricky because you need to search the terms 乘车码. But on Alipay, I believe there's already a transport mini program on the main menu that you can easily navigate to. Once you have the transport QR code, just scan it at the metro gantries and bus entrances for boarding. Typically, a trip on the metro costs me maximum of 1 to 2 Singapore dollars, and shorter journeys are usually under $1. For those of you with young children who likely don't have their own apps, you will need to purchase transport cards at the station. As with most cities, you can either purchase single journey tickets or simply get a transport card and top up the amount that you think you'll need. To find out the best transport route to get around the city, I use 高德地图 or A-Map in English. Google Maps don't work well in China, especially if you need specific directions on which line to take, where to transit. A-Map is also now optimized in English, so don't worry if you're not proficient in Chinese. I also find A-Map super useful in looking for places to eat and shop. If you prefer not to stress over navigating public transport routes in China, then just book a Didi, which is a ride-hailing platform. To book Didi rides, you can either download Didi app or do it like me by using the mini app in WeChat and Alipay. You can also key in your destinations in English if you can't write in Chinese. But I found that it is important to choose pickups with obvious pickup points, like at malls or hotels, because the map location pins may adjust itself to the nearest proper pickup point if you happen to input a location that cars cannot enter or drive through. That could make the subsequent communication with the driver a bit challenging, especially if you cannot speak Mandarin. Besides the apps that I mentioned, I also recommend downloading 2 other apps. One is called 大众点评 or 点评 in short. It's the main platform in China for users to leave reviews on restaurants and shops, and there's almost always some kind of 点评 discount or promotion that you can use at restaurants. For example, in the recent Guangzhou trip, I redeemed the 10-cent cold pasta starter dish just by checking into the Rongyi restaurant on the app.
Super show.
You can also easily find top-rated restaurants on the app, though I think the reviews may not be an accurate reflection of the restaurant standard because some restaurants do give away freebies in exchange for 5-star reviews. The second app that I recommend downloading is Meituan, which is a food delivery app. This is a lifesaver for an introvert like me. On a couple of days when I felt a little overwhelmed by the crowds, I opted for food to be delivered to my hotel. It's also super affordable. A proper meal, including delivery, costs just $6. If you want drinks, maybe cater another $2 to $3. One thing to note is that you will need a China mobile number in order to place an order. If you are staying in a hotel, you can try asking the hotel concierge to input their number, but if you're staying in an Airbnb, then you definitely need your own number. The short answer to whether you can survive in China without a China mobile number is yes, you can. But, of course, it comes with disadvantages. Besides being able to order food on Meituan, having a China mobile number allows you to easily purchase attraction tickets by scanning QR codes at the attractions instead of queuing up at physical counters. This happened to me in Hangzhou when I had to queue up multiple times at different stations of Lingyin Temple. And that was on a crowded weekend, simply because I didn't have a China number to purchase tickets on WeChat or Alipay. I also couldn't book a river cruise at an unmanned station along Westlake because those require a China mobile number to purchase as well. Another awesome benefit of having a China mobile number is the ability to sign up for shop memberships to enjoy shopping discounts. Don't belittle these discounts. I can get something like 20 to 30% off my purchase with some of these memberships. I'll leave a link to the China SIM card that I purchased in description below. But if you're using a China SIM card, just know that internet restrictions do apply. I had to use a VPN and connect to servers in Hong Kong or Taiwan in order to continue using my social media apps whenever I use the China SIM card. If you don't wish to use a VPN, you can purchase extra data eSIM to navigate the Western apps. I know language barrier seems to be the top concern for non-Chinese speaking travelers. To be honest, I agree it will be challenging, but I think it's still doable. Alipay, for example, is optimized to be foreigner-friendly. There's literally a built-in translator that you can use when you browse the app functions or when you scan to make orders in the restaurants. There are also many English signages in public places like the metro, shopping malls, and attractions. I think the issue may arise when you try to communicate with the locals. Frankly, it's still uncommon to find service staff who can speak fluent English in China. In such cases, you can only depend on apps like Google Translate. I also received questions from viewers about dietary requirements. The concept of dietary restrictions isn't very mainstream yet in China. Sometimes even if you say no meat, they might still give you something cooked in a meat broth or topped with pork floss. So if you can, be as specific as possible. You can also write it down or show a translation on your phone. Ultimately, I think it's still safer to bring some snacks or instant meals that you trust just in case. Before my first time to China, toilet hygiene was the most talked about issue that others warned me about. Now that I have been to 3 major Chinese cities and 2 smaller cities, I think I can share my personal experience. In first-tier cities including Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, the toilets in shopping malls and major attractions are mostly very modern and very clean. You can even find smart toilets with heated seats and bidet in a few posh malls. In restaurants, however, many still use squat toilets. So if you have mobility issues, I suggest that you use toilets in the malls as much as possible. In the smaller cities, however, I noticed that squat toilets are pretty much the norm. Thankfully, they are still clean, and I haven't experienced half-door cubicles, which I heard would be the case in places like Beijing and in smaller towns and the countryside. We'll see. I hope this video helped you feel a little bit more ready for your trip to China. And if you have been there before and have tips of your own, please drop them in the comments below. Of course, feel free to also ask questions that I didn't cover in the video. Safe travels!